Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, another violent attack on Jews in America as an illegal immigrant uses Molotov cocktails to burn several people in Boulder, Colorado. They were simply coming out to support the remaining Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Almost all of the victims were older than 67 years old. It's perhaps the biggest victory of the war so far for Ukraine, as a drone attack stuns the Russian military. Dozens of Russian nuclear bombers and other aircraft were wiped out deep inside Russia. A new report confirms Iran is much more advanced in its nuclear weapons program than previously believed, thanks to regularly breaking the rules of the old Iran nuclear deal when it was still in effect. The news casts doubt on whether any new Iranian promises in a new nuclear deal can be trusted in any way. It looks like Hamas is nixing the ceasefire deal the Trump team put together and Israel accepted. Meanwhile, the terrorist group has been caught killing its own people, trying to get U.S. and Israeli-provided aid packages, and then pretending Israel did the killing. Guess who fell for those lies? And the U.S. Coast Guard seizes more than $211 million of cocaine and brings it to the coast of Miami. In all, it was more than 28,000 pounds, or about enough for one P. Diddy and Hunter Biden housewarming party. American Sunrise Early Edition begins now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Good morning and happy Monday here on American Sunrise Early Edition. Sorry, not sorry for the Hunter Biden and P. Diddy joke. A lot of rough news to deal with this morning. I needed a little bit of a smile to start. Maybe you did too. Joining me now is former Green Beret and podcast host Matt Tardio. And Matt, I want to get to this situation in Boulder. You used to be a law enforcement officer not far from Boulder in Colorado. So I want to lean on some of your expertise there as well. But Matt, I have a theory about these anti-Semitic attacks. There are people who say that false reports or hateful reports or biased reports against Israel trigger these attackers. I actually think they have it only half right. I think these attackers are already triggered. Someone who would use Molotov cocktails to burn elderly people didn't suddenly become that person because they saw some stories in a newspaper. But what I do think those stories do, Matt, is they give them in their mind, in the back of their mind or the forefront of their mind, the idea that if they do this now that these stories are in the news, they're more likely to get support for what they've done and more likely to maybe even get away with it, at least to some degree. I think that's what's going on here. And your experience as a law enforcement official, do you see maybe when people get arrested like this, acting in that way, like that, yeah, they're justified and they feel a little bit more emboldened at these moments?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the angry mob zombie mentality that kind of goes into it. And so, yeah, all of the false reporting or all of the fake news that you end up seeing floating around the internet, and all of the celebrities, all of the politicians. Yeah, I mean, name one, pick one, any time that they end up seeing that this is the mainstream thing to do is to hate on Jews, they'll turn around, they'll do it because they've got the mob mentality behind them. And, why wouldn't they think that they're going to get supported when you have people like the young gentleman down in Frisco, Texas? He's a minor, so I'm not just going to be, saying his name out here. But the young gentleman down in Frisco, Texas, just stabbed another student. And all of a sudden he's got how much money that's been raised for him? Right. And we see stuff like that time and time again. But the funny part is it's not just on the side of, as long as you hate Jews, we're going to support you. We now have the same exact thing going on the opposite side of the aisle as well, to where a lady can run around screaming the N-word and people are going to throw millions of dollars at her, too. So why not? To me, it's one, there's a mental illness crisis here in the United States of America. And then we also have just a common sense crisis in the United States of America alongside that.
Yeah. And we've also imported it. Stephen Miller, the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, says this was an illegal immigrant, technically someone who overstayed his visa, was given some kind of an extension, but really shouldn't have been given it. So, sure, we have a mental illness crisis in America. I'm the first to say that. but we are also importing a lot of hate. And it's just, that's not something that we need. Now, I'm going to get to Israel a little bit later. I've deliberately separated these stories because, as I've said, nothing that's happening in Israel justifies what this guy did to unarmed people who were just out there. But let's talk about another story. We'll get back to Israel in just a second because, Matt, I want to talk about this drone attack by Ukraine on Russia, destroying several heavy nuclear bombers, other aircraft deep inside the country. This seems to be, it sure seems to be like the biggest victory of the war for either side. Of course, my first thoughts are, this, of course, is just going to escalate things, isn't it? I mean, Russia's not going to sit by here. Is there any even point of having peace talks now after this? Or let's be optimistic for just 1 second. Maybe after this defeat, maybe Russia will be more willing to make a concession to end this. I have a feeling you're going to agree with my first thought, but go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I don't think there was any chance for peace to begin with. Just to be perfectly clear, Russia has made that clear on their very own. In order to have peace, and Vladimir Putin did try coming to the table in his own Putin type of way. He said that, as long as you give up Crimea and all of the land that we currently occupy in between, eastern Ukraine all the way down to Crimea, which would be the land bridge, as long as you give up all of that terrain, we're willing to accept some sort of a peace, right? Like that's what we're willing to do. Obviously, Zelensky can't do that. It's not a question of if he wants to do that. He literally can't do it constitutionally speaking. It's just not within his scope of powers. He can't do it. So there is no chance for peace there, and Ukraine would be done for accepting it. But as far as the drone attack goes, yeah, that is huge. It's a massive, massive victory when you start looking at the massive amounts of bombers that ended up getting taken out with this. I mean, it's embarrassing. You're talking about, strikes as deep as 4,000 kilometers inside of Russia, where this ended up taking place, an intelligence operation that took over a year and a half to plan. And so then it's a black eye for Russia for that reason. Okay, well, why didn't the FSB catch this? Why didn't all of your national security experts catch this? How is it that for a year and a half, you had Ukrainian operators inside of your country building drones, gathering explosives, gathering the materials, gathering the people in your intelligence network didn't happen to pick up on this? That's nuts. And then you go into the coordination across Russia and how widely spread these suckers were going over there. It's embarrassment to Russia on several levels. And what's probably worse is a lot of the aircraft they ended up taking out were built in like the 1940s or have been operational since like 1940s. Russia hasn't replaced them, and they have no way of replacing a lot of these aircraft now.
Right. And that's probably not a lot of people who even remember how to build them. Let's get back to the war in Gaza. Hamas may be on its last legs, but it's the one, the one that's really almost dead. They're the ones demanding more ridiculous terms and have basically nixed and killed this potential ceasefire plan. I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of glad they did, because this ceasefire deal involved the Israelis handing over more than 1,100 Hamas terrorists who have death sentences, actually life sentences. Israel does not have the death penalty, have life sentences on them. But this is Hamas doing this. And Matt, my thought is, because Hamas is about death. It's not about a group that someday wants to have a state and wants to have a functioning society. They only exist to kill Israelis. And if that ends, so be it. They're not really going to change their tune and become a state or a government entity that really functions.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I also don't think Hamas is currently in the position to be able to actually exchange hostages. The information that I have heard so far coming out of Gaza is that Hamas is very broke down. I mean, you got all of their leadership has been taken out time and time again, right? Like everybody's dead. And so because of that, you have a bunch of people that are falling apart and leaving, right? You have people that are defecting. And so essentially, when you talk about Hamas now over inside Gaza, you're talking about isolated cells that are running around the Gaza Strip. Not a whole lot of command and control going on over top of them. When you look at October 7th and how it went down, it wasn't like it was just Hamas that crossed the border either. You had a bunch of Palestinian civilians pouring out of Gaza that went into Israel to go murder, rape, and pillage just as well. So I'm not even sure that Hamas actually has all of the people they say that they can actually exchange. I just don't believe so. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Finally, Matt, Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, made one of the harshest warnings ever to China about Taiwan, using the term, quote, devastating consequences, end quote, if Beijing decides to attack. Should we buy that warning from Hegseth? And what could we have up our sleeve as far as those devastating consequences are concerned, Matt?
Yes. Oh man. Oh, love it. Yeah. No. Yeah. You should listen to Hegseth when he says, "Don't do that." That's not going to be very good for him. Number one, we've got God only knows how many nuclear submarines that are likely deployed over to that region already. We saw Taiwan had how many, Chinese ships that were floating over and around it. And something that a lot of people don't know about Taiwan is like the reef system that goes around it. And so if the Chinese Navy thinks it's going to be a good idea that they're going to somehow mount an amphibious assault on this, they're essentially going to be funneled into kind of like a little channelized area. So it's not going to be very hard to target and go after these ships. We also have a lot of other things that we could hold over China. And China's got a lot of things that they can hold over us as well when we look into it. But at the end of the day, the Chinese military is more or less a paper tiger for the most part. There's a lot of things that they've been doing that they've been building up to be able to come after the United States, but they've also had a lot of munitions that have been found over the past to essentially kind of do the old school Soviet Union type thing where they build them out and they pretend like they have these munitions, but then they end up being filled with garbage, water or freaking, trash, whatever. They're not actual munitions. So do I think that we have something up our sleeves for the Chinese military? Absolutely. I think we do. But do I know exactly what the SecDef has laid out? No. But do we know where China would be coming from? Absolutely. Do we think they're going to have the ability to retaliate against whatever we have to throw at them? Sure. But we're likely leaps and bounds ahead of them.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so that is very interesting, though, what you said about the reef system there, because there have been instances in military history where if you have an actual bottleneck and an invading force has to go through it, that can give you sometimes an advantage that overcomes 10-1 odds. I'm remembering the Yom Kippur War. Right. With the Syrian tanks basically outnumbered the Israeli tanks 800-80, but those Syrian tanks had to go through a particular bottleneck, and the Israelis just not picked them off one by one by one. So you're saying there's a reef system like that, that similar protecting Taiwan, a natural barrier?
That is my understanding, yes. And we call them choke points. Choke points. It's kind of the reason why when CQB, it's you have a fatal funnel that's a doorway. You get the hell out of the doorway. It's the same thing when you start talking there. Yeah, there's a certain direction that they're going to have to come from, and they're going to end up getting schwacked the moment they try to push through it. It's not going to turn out good. It's just not. Yeah.
You say choke point. I say bottleneck. That's because I'm a civilian. Matt Tardia, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, sir.
All right, coming up, the head of the Art Institute of Chicago gets caught imitating art, sort of. And wait till you hear his punishment, only in America. And have you been waiting around all weekend, checking your Ring camera for that Amazon package with your 28,500 pounds of cocaine coming? I have some bad news for you. Brace yourself. American Sunrise Early Edition will be right back. That's a live look at Miami, Florida this morning. Another beautiful day, beautiful week. Up in the Northeast, it's been pretty nice too. We were supposed to have a terrible, terrible washout in the major northeastern cities, and we only had a little bit of rain. Not bad. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to you who are watching and commenting on Getter and Rumble, even the people taking a shot at me. Hey, that's what it's all about. If you have a thin skin, don't get into this business. All right. The Art Institute of Chicago director James Rondeau is coming back to work today. That's nice. That's after a 1-month suspension because he stripped completely naked during a flight to Germany on April 18th. I'm going to bet he was a bit tipsy and not trying to demonstrate what some of the museum's nude sculptures look like. Maybe to the rest of the passengers. Okay, I'm just kidding, but he did actually strip completely naked on a major crowded commercial flight. It looks like that suspension is going to be his entire punishment. He's going to go back to his $1 million a year salary job. I'm sure he makes money from other stuff too. Hey, you know what? I bet if an employee at that museum took one postcard from the gift shop, he would be fired forever. There's a 2-tiered justice system in the museum world, and I'm here to tell you about it. All right, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Thetis, that's the name of the cutter, offloaded more than 28,500 pounds of cocaine at Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale just a couple of days ago. This is actually, a lot of it was taken off of the coast of Florida seas there, but most of it was actually from Mexico, and it was brought to Florida where they impound all this stuff. It has a street value of more than $211 million. For the record, that's a lot of cocaine. And if you're listening to the story expecting some kind of Hunter Biden or Pete Diddy joke from me, you came too late. I made those jokes earlier in the program. We are very serious about our 7 a.m. Eastern Time start time here on American Sunrise Early Edition. You have to show up at the beginning. I'm going to hold you to that. You can watch it on replay on X if you want to. Anyway, folks, that's what we're talking about here. We start at 7 a.m. sharp, and that's where you have to be here for those kinds of jokes. Okay, the Trump administration is trying to fix all the economic messes that was handed by the Biden team, and the stark difference for the better is already clear. But when they're trying to right the country, they can't also take your personal finances into account. You know what I mean? You have to do that. And that's why thousands of Americans are buying gold now from Birch Gold. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. Central banks are buying gold in record quantities, so demand doesn't seem to be subsiding. With the Rio reset on the horizon, and that's where BRICS nations are looking to unseat the US dollar as the global reserve currency, you can find peace of mind in gold. Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or a 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. You can even buy some to store in your home safely. Just text America to 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of protecting your savings today. Text America to the number 989898. Coming up, guess what? Wall Street is watching the Trump-Harvard war very, very closely, and it's not because the fancy investment brokers are worried about funding for the steeplechase team. I'll explain what's really bothering them when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. live look at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania this morning. Man, they say Philadelphia is a major urban city, I guess, but you know, it's like almost 7:30 on a Monday morning. You would think there'd be a lot more traffic in a major, New York, Manhattan, I promise you, it's a lot more crowded already. That intersection looks dangerous. Looks like there's a lot of crashes going to happen there. I hope not. Let's take a look at where the markets will begin today here on American Sunrise Early Edition. We have some red arrows. Not too bad. You know, we had some over the weekend news about the trade situation getting a little bit nastier. China and the United States accusing each other of stuff. President Trump, I'll talk about in a second, talked about a new tariff. There was a time just a couple of weeks ago where that kind of news would have sent us down 1,000 points on the Dow futures. Now it's just 100 because investors are getting a little bit more savvy. Look at gold, though, 33.74. Gold is taking a nice jump higher. And now let's take a look at Bitcoin. Still well over the 100,000 level, but coming back a little bit. Remember, we hit 110, maybe even 111, I think, at one point, not that a week or so ago. So we're still in that high area, high range, but getting a little bit off that 110 high. President Trump has, now that he's made that announcement, a lot of you watched it here on Real America's Voice, that rally in Pittsburgh, where he announced that he's approved the Nippon Steel-U.S. Steel merger. The White House is now moving to protect that American steel industry more than ever. The president says he's doubling down on steel imports, the import tariffs to 50% from 25%. The European Union has responded, saying it will raise tariffs as well. Canadian steel workers getting all upset. The White House insists that protecting the steel industry is a matter of national security in addition to a matter of American economic health. Whatever you feel about tariffs, whatever you feel about protectionism, I think we can all agree that if we have steel that's not made in this country, how can we build our battleships? How can we build our jets? How can we build so many of our other important, I'm just talking about military stuff here. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about. How can we build those things with confidence if we're not getting the steel made here in the United States? It's one of those instances where even I think some libertarians could admit you got to have steel made in your domestic country. Okay, OPEC Plus isn't going to change its plans about how much it's going to increase oil production. They are going to boost oil production by 411,000 barrels per day. 411,000 barrels per day starting next month. Now, there were some people who were expecting OPEC to cut that production number, and they were expecting to see oil prices soar back to the $70 a barrel level. Instead, they kept it where it was. There were some people who were kind of hoping they would increase it even more than 411K, but they're going to keep it there. So that's why we're at about $63 a barrel this morning and not any higher. That is still multi-year lows in that range that we're talking about. We got below $60 a barrel a couple of weeks ago, you might remember. These are very, very low numbers, and that's why gas prices are staying very, very tame and going down in some places across America, unless you live in a high-tax state like California or Connecticut. And I'm sorry for you if you do, at least when you go to the gas station. Other nice things about those states we can talk about later. Okay, Wall Street is watching the Trump administration's funding wars with Harvard very, very closely. We've talked about this story a lot. We haven't talked so much about the financial community and how they're responding to it. We keep saying that Trump is pulling billions from Harvard, et cetera, but that has a bigger effect on than just on Harvard. A lot of trading firms and private equity trading firms have skin in this game. According to my friend Charlie Gasparino at the New York Post, a lot of those private equity firms, a lot of those investment houses, they're the ones that Harvard gives that money that you and I, the taxpayer, give to Harvard to invest that money tax-free, because it's a university, in their endowment fund. There's a lot of Wall Street chicanery going on with that money, a lot of fancy derivative investments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Hey, that's their right as capitalists. They can do that all day. But it's interesting to understand that we are funding that as taxpayers. So the same politicians who go around and say Wall Street has all these tax breaks, the billionaires, I'm doing my Bernie Sanders impersonation, the billionaires who get all our money, they have no problem with Harvard taking the money tax-free and investing it and sending it to some of these fancy firms that do all this kind of stuff. So a lot of them are watching this and they're worried. I don't think this is going to make the American people dislike Harvard any less. They will dislike them even more, knowing that's where they're putting that money to really gamble on Wall Street. Again, taxpayer money. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. It is Moving America, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company, artilleryteaco.com. Let me say that again. artilleryteaco.com. Use promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaco.com. The promo code is America's Tea, and you get 25% off your first order. Here is a fair and frequently asked question in America. I feel like it's been asked since I was a kid. Here's the question. Is the Chrysler brand going to survive, or will it go extinct like Plymouth? The question is being asked again these days because Chrysler parent Stellantis just has a brand new CEO, and people are wondering if Chrysler's fleet of minivans, because that's all they have right now, if those minivans are popular enough to stay afloat, to keep the whole brand afloat. Stellantis, which also owns Dodge, Jeep, Alfa Romeo, it needs to make cuts to stay alive, and Chrysler seems like a logical choice to do it. But Chrysler America's chief, his name is Chris Buell, says a new Chrysler crossover SUV is planned for 2027. That could be big. By the way, in case you were wondering, the Chrysler 300 sedan, which I thought looked kind of like a Bentley, it was discontinued in 2023. So it shows how much taste I have. I actually didn't buy the Chrysler 300, but I thought it looked nice. Okay, one Stellantis model that is definitely alive and kicking is the Dodge Durango Hellcat. By the way, somebody in a Dodge Durango Hellcat over the weekend zoomed by me in a very loud car, but people like that. It's an SUV. It kind of looks like a minivan, but it's got the power of a muscle car. It has 710 horsepower to be exact. It will return for the 2026 model year. There were most experts out there thought this was going to be the last year. In fact, Dodge itself made it seem that way. They were selling this year's model as kind of a farewell model. Well, not so much. It's coming back. The details on the pricing and other changes to the model will be coming out later this summer. But if you like driving a car that kind of looks like a minivan, again, I'm sorry if you're offended by that. You've got it in the Dodge Durango. It's loud. It kind of looks tough. People can put stickers on it with like fireballs and things like that. And it makes them feel like their family car is a muscle car. But it does have 710 horsepower, so you got to give it credit. Okay, here's an admittedly trick question. This is a trick question. What car company makes Japan's most popular vehicle import? The answer we just learned for last year is Suzuki. But wait, you say, isn't Suzuki a Japanese company? Well, yes, it is. But it turns out it makes the very popular in Japan Jimny Nomad. That's the name of the car, Jimny Nomad. But it makes that car in India. So it's technically an import to Japan, even though it's made by Suzuki. Hey, does that sound familiar? There are a lot of popular American vehicles made by GM and Ford, American car companies, and Stellantis that are made in Canada, made in Mexico. I guess Japan doesn't slap tariffs on its own companies like the United States does. But hey, GM CEO Mary Barra just said last week that the tariffs will help GM eventually, even though it's a $5 billion hit in the short term. So maybe Japan wants to slap Suzuki with something here, but their number one imported model is made in India. I think that's funny. Okay, here's a math problem. How can you be charged with drunk driving if your blood alcohol level is 0.00? Answer, you can be if you're driving in Hawaii, where it turns out hundreds of completely sober drivers were still arrested for DUIs. But then they had those arrests erased, or at least they're in the process of being erased. There's a huge lawsuit going on. The Honolulu Police Department is one of those police departments that's looking into this. I don't think they need to look into it too much because I did. It only took me a few minutes to find out what I think the problem was. It turns out many of the state police and city police departments in Hawaii have an interesting policy. If you're a cop and you make a drunk driving arrest, it doesn't matter how early in the day you've made it. After you've made the arrest and filed the paperwork, you get the rest of the day off. That sounds like an incentive to arrest anybody and anyone who looks like maybe they swerved out of a lane for 1 second for DUI. You write them up, and then you can go to your barbecue or your luau with your friends. This is a terrible policy. This is going to, unless they fix that, they're going to have a lot more of these bogus DUI arrests. I can tell you that right now. What an amazing, amazing story out of Hawaii. Last year alone, I think it was 130 DUI arrests when people came up with 0.00 blood alcohol levels. That's fishy. Okay, coming up, They keep telling us the economy is on the rocks. They say it's the number one issue in every presidential election. But if so, why are so many people in the news media business unable to report on this properly? I'll have some answers when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. It's Monday, June 2nd. Here are some of today's top stories. Another violent attack on Jews in America, as an illegal immigrant uses Molotov cocktails to burn several people in Boulder, Colorado. They were simply out to support the remaining Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Almost all of the victims were older than 67 years old. It's perhaps the biggest victory of the war so far for Ukraine, as a drone attack stuns the Russian military. Dozens of Russian nuclear bombers and other aircraft were wiped out deep inside Russia, and wait to hear about how they got those drones in there. It looks like Hamas is nixing the ceasefire deal the Trump team put together and Israel accepted. Meanwhile, the terrorist group has been caught killing its own people, trying to get U.S. and Israeli-provided aid packages, and then pretending Israel did it. Guess who fell for their lies? CNN, New York Times, you know, the usual suspects. And the experts keep telling us the U.S. economy is collapsing because of the Trump tariffs, but the American consumer keeps telling us a different story. What's going on here? American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back. Joining me now is Old Glory Bank co-founder and CEO Mike Ring. He's joining us here on American Sunrise Early Edition in our second half hour. He's also happy that all of you on Getter and Rumble are on and also commenting. Hey, look, Mike, since we last spoke on this program, the stock market has surged. It's surged higher, at least for the most part. We're certainly way up on a net basis since last time. We're going to take a look at the futures right now because they're ugly. We're going to have an ugly open. But hey, here's what I'm going to predict, Mike. Because of today's ugly open, you're going to have headline after headline in the mainstream news media talking about how the Trump tariffs are killing us. They're killing the market. They will not be looking at the overall numbers, but show that we basically regained all of those numbers, and we've been on a major winning streak for the last few weeks. And they find it, again, and I want to say something about this. It's irresponsible, as I'm saying right now, to call for the gloom and doom when you have a few days, let alone, or even a few weeks, but certainly a few days, let alone a few days of market downturn. It's also irresponsible to say happy days are here again, nothing to worry about after we have a few days of gains. Where, Mike, where is the mature, fair coverage of the economy in the American news media today other than this program? I just don't see it.
Well, it's nowhere, and we represent the same people you talk to every day, Jake, and that's Middle America. And so let's just about the stock market you just said, and oh, by the way, can you believe the experts are wrong again? So everyone likes to talk about the market off of their peaks, but we got to go back to pre-election. That's when it really became Trump's market and Trump's economy on November 5th, not January 20th, like a lot of people say are the peaks. So since November 4th, when everyone started betting on Trump, the NASDAQ is up, the S&P is up, Dow is about average. So don't think about the peaks. Think about where we are. And then look at the other elements that make up the economy for Middle America. Unemployment continues to be low at 4.2% was the latest report. Now, I would submit to you the participation rate of able-bodied men working is way too low at 65%. It should be 85%. But that's what Trump wants to solve with the tariffs, get people working again. But unemployment as a whole is great. Inflation is way down from what we saw last year, of course, at about 2.5%. And equally important, I think, is consumer confidence. Now, that's not a real thing, but it shows how people are feeling. And when you look at that consumer confidence index, it's made up of the business conditions, the employment prospects of what people are feeling, and what people feel in future income. And May is up again. Now, as you said, it's not all rosy, and I don't want to just tell one side of the story, but we still have a couple challenges. The GDP was slightly down in Q1 of this year, but I think that was not an accurate reading because of the rise in foreign imports, because of the getting ahead of the tariffs, and also government spending was down. But what it worries me as a banker is the consumer delinquency rate is up in May, and it's up over the last quarter. And that is what we are really looking at. It's about 12% now. Historically, it should be 9. It was 11 last quarter. And I would submit to you, it's not because of unemployment. It's not because of people's prospect. It is because interest rates remain stubbornly high. So the prime is 7.5% today, but consumers do not pay prime. They pay a high credit card rate, about 24. So if we can get interest rates down, I think that will bring down the credit card interest rates, and we'll solve that delinquency rate. But that's what worries me right now as I look into 2025, is that delinquency rate.
You mentioned credit cards, Mike. Let me think. Who was the American politician who's mostly responsible for the fact that Americans have a massive number of credit cards? And his name was Joe Biden when he was a senator from Delaware, when he was doing all that. And he's the reason, by the way, for why so many people have too many credit cards, the whole thing. It's really, to me, the biggest stress on the American economy. I'm really worried about that.
You're 100% right, Jake, because
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. It's the interest rates are so high because of the default rate, and the default rate is so high is because, every person needs a credit card, and that's just not the right approach. So we all suffer because of that initiative. You're 100% right.
Yeah, that's Joe Biden. That was one of his signature contributions to the American people when he was a senator. It continues to boggle my mind. Forget about his cognitive problems. The man's record, how Barack Obama chose him to be his vice president, I'll never know. I don't understand why he would choose one of the most corrupt and laughable members of the Senate. He was just one of the biggest jokes in the Senate for years, and he elevated him as vice president, and then we know what happened after that. That's another story. Let's talk about someone who was a good manager of a number of private businesses, and that's Elon Musk. The news coming up just a couple of days ago that he's going to leave the full-time government service at Doge, go back to fully focusing on all those businesses that he runs that are amazingly successful, Tesla, SpaceX, et cetera, et cetera. But, it does seem like this is the end of the first wave of the Doge project. And I wonder, just again, do you think that this was just an example, and all that hatred that he took as well, is this what people can expect if they're successful leaders in private business, if they go into any kind of government service, even for a short amount of time? I mean, haven't we always asked ourselves for years, why don't better people run for president? I think we got our answer with the whole way that Elon Musk was treated, didn't we?
You're 100% right. And if you remove our military members, and especially those who are wounded or killed, and maybe even remove Trump from the equation, can you think of another American, and listen, he wasn't even born here, and think about what he's done. Can you think of another American who has done more to serve his country than Elon Musk, in the pain and the ridicule and the threats he took? Now, politicians always say they serve, but they go to Washington to get rich and famous. He went to get hated and poorer. And so on behalf of middle America and the people we serve, we are so thankful what he's done. And get off the $2 trillion that people said that he could find. He found so far 175 billion with the B. But what's even more important, I think, for folks like you and I and your viewers, is that he exposed the woke and the corruption that we were spending. And to me, that is worth more than the money he saved.
Yeah, my favorite part of it was the U.S. Aid office, the U.S. AID office, where it turned out so much. It was basically a money laundering operation, going to a lot of terrorist groups, by the way. And it made me smile because it basically proved that if you cut off all foreign aid, our friends in the world, and not enough of them, but our friends in the world will actually do better, even if you cut off aid to them or cut off any financial support or loan backing, because if you cut off all the money that we're giving to their enemies, which is much more, will also be cut off. It'll be a net win. All right, this story is not just political or about our big cities. And this is what I want to ask you. This is an economic question. New York local politician Gail Brewer is demanding that taxpayers foot the bill for illegal immigrants' dental work. That's pretty expensive. Now, the reason why I bring this up is not to get into the weeds of the illegal migrant crisis, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the economic illiteracy of so many people that we have in government. Mike, I often talk about, if anyone is talking in politics about the cost of something, whether it's a drug, whether it's going to the hospital, whether it's the cost of a college education, and if they don't discuss that, Mike, on the terms of the law of supply and demand, then it's not worth listening to them. The cost of everything, the price of everything is set by those things. Gail, where is the demand from the American voter to provide free dental care to illegal immigrants? I mean, honestly, this is the she must think that money is growing on trees.
Well, two thoughts on that. One is, as we know, the big, beautiful bill is actually going to eliminate Medicare for this group of migrants. But what I'm actually going to throw her a prop, and I don't want your viewers to get mad at me. She may be the first hard left politician that has ever walked the talk. Like she, as much as Bernie and AOC talk about free for everyone, including dental. It was bad enough to get medical, but now she's worried about dental. By her own reporting, and I believe it to be true, she took $10,000 of her own money to help these migrants with dental. Like, can you name another hard left politician who's ever done that? They always want to serve people with our money. So I ask her, well, this was a great start. Of course, your colleagues would never write a check, so I give you props. But I think the next move, Councilman Brewer, is that you should open your door so these people have a beautiful home to live with you. And then you truly will be doing what you preach.
That's a good point. I've actually met her. She's a nice enough woman. So I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, again, she won't be able to give away that kind of money for long. But at least you're right. At least she's actually doing that. We have
first one ever
live behind very high walls. Yeah, we have people, for example, who live behind very high walls around all of their properties who tell us to open the borders, things like that. So at least on that issue, she's not a hypocrite. Thank you for bringing that up. We don't want to always be bashing people on the program, but you make a good point. All right. Speaking of helping people out, finally, Mike, your Old Glory Bank saw an interesting moment unfold here on Real America's Voice. It was Vince Buda of Studio 6B talking about how he was debanked. Watch this.
I get a message from my bank, which I'm not afraid to say who it is. Chase Bank. I opened an account.
Chase business away.
Good luck. I opened an account.
Yeah.
My first job out of college in 1984. That's when I opened that account.
Wow.
And I use it for personal stuff. I don't do much with it. I don't get wires in or wires out. It's a very basic account. They canceled it. And I'm thinking, I talked to the guy. I'm like, why would you cancel this account? What did I do? He goes, we can't tell you what that is.
I can tell you.
And Damon says, I can tell you. And what is it?
Yeah, they probably saw they probably watched the show.
Exactly.
Or they went to your social media and saw your social media feed, saw some clips, saw something, saw you somewhere associated with this show.
His social
Because it happened to me.
It happened to you
There's no
too?
other explanation. Yeah, of course.
Oh my God. I thought I was so insulted by this. I don't even know what to say, because I told the guy, my body of work, my life, since I'm 21 years old, I have been with you. And now you're telling me I can no longer be a customer of yours because of something you don't want to tell me. And now if I'm a conservative and I support MAGA, I can't bank at your bank. And I know this has happened.
All right, so that's something that happened. And you guys saw this, Mike. I understand Old Glory Bank, your bank, has reached out to Vince, reached out to the folks on the show, and there's been some kind of contact made?
Well, actually, if you play that clip another 2 minutes, you can see that Damon and some other folks say you got to bank at Old Glory Bank. It was the greatest shout out ever.
Okay.
For exactly what Vince talked about is exactly why we started a couple years ago. Ben Carson, myself, Larry Elder, John Rich. Debanking is real, and Chase is the worst, right behind Bank of America. Anyone thinks that because we have a new president, new administration, that we no longer have debanking, they're wrong. They still hate us. They hate middle America. They hate what we believe in. So this is not intended to be a massive plug, but it takes 8 minutes to open an account at Old Glory Bank, and I don't know why everyone's not banking at Old Glory Bank.
Oh, well, thank God. I like the speed you're talking about there. For some reason, when I get behind someone at the ATM, every single time I go to, which is not that often anymore because I can do so much stuff online, but it feels like every time I go to the ATM, the person in front of me is refinancing their mortgage or doing some kind of derivatives trade. It takes forever. But anyway, so it sounds like I could open an account with you guys much faster than that. Mike Ring from Old Glory Bank, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for reaching out. And again, being our voice of economic reason here. We're trying to let everyone understand that you should not be watching other news programs if you want to get your economic news. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, the man police say carried out the Boulder firebombing attack on mostly elderly Jewish people. I guess he was really threatened by them. What a loser. It turns out he was an illegal immigrant. Colorado is a sanctuary state. These two facts go hand in hand. David Brody and I will discuss just ahead. It's a live look at the White House here on a beautiful Monday morning here in the northeastern United States. I guess you call the White House the Mid-Atlantic states. When I was growing up in Norfolk, Virginia, they called us Mid-Atlantic. They even had Mid-Atlantic Wrestling before WWF took over everything. Anyone here remembers what I'm talking about might feel old, but don't feel old. We're all young at heart. Welcome back. Had to start with a little bit of brightness here on American Sunrise Early Edition for our final segment of this program, because the rest of the news that we're about to talk about now is not so great. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller says the Boulder firebomber, his name is Mohammed Soliman, I don't want to say his name ever again, but I just had to get that out there. He says he's an illegal alien who arrived in the U.S. on a visa issued by the Biden administration. When he illegally overstayed that visa, he was given a second chance and issued a new work permit. I don't know what he was working at, maybe at hate. Look, folks, I understand we have a lot of hate in this country. Not saying it's perfect. I think we're better than just about any other country on that fact. But you certainly don't need to import new hate And again, folks, all of these issues seem to run into the same conduit, don't they? Illegal immigration, importing hatred, not imposing law and order. It's one thing that this guy got in here. Why can't we deport him? He should have been deported in March, again, according to Stephen Miller. David Brody joins me right now. And David, not only that, on a federal level with the Biden administration, but we have states like Colorado, cities like Boulder, who say they're sanctuary cities. Let me tell you what sanctuary means. Basically, it means you don't get busted. Now, historically, you end up getting busted. Sanctuary cities, since the time of the Bible, have a 0 for 3,000 year record in the long term. Eventually, these people will get busted. But sanctuary doesn't just say, oh, they'll let me off for this one thing. No, it tells them this is like safe when you're playing tag. This is like the base. You won't get busted for anything. And it's going to attract killers, rapists, people who steal. It doesn't mean all the illegal immigrants do that. Of course not. But they're going to be attracted when you say the word sanctuary. And now we're attracting people who firebomb elderly Jewish people. I don't know what this guy was threatened by elderly Jewish people. Maybe he thought they were going to take his cup of Sanka. I don't really know what he thought he was going to get, what he was worried about there. But I hope they throw him under the jail and never let him out. What do you think, David?
You're absolutely right, Jake. And this is what Tom Homan has been trying to crack down on, right? These sanctuary cities. This idea that you walk in there and you say, okay, we need your help. And they go, no, I don't think so. We're not going to help you at all. And so you're right. It's a safe, free base for folks, literally free base. In this case, maybe he was free basing. Who the heck knows what he was doing? But the point is that he does have a safe home there in Boulder, in Granola Head, Boulder, Colorado. I've been on the Pearl Street Mall. I know it well. I lived in Colorado for 10 years. I covered a lot of things, a lot of events going on in Boulder. That place is crazy, out of control. But look, if you look at the overstay issue, first of all, you mentioned 2022. That's when he originally came here. But then let's remember that overstay, right, expired in 2023. Then it was renewed again. And then that expired just a couple months ago in March. Oh, there's one more aspect to this story. He was actually denied a visa back in 2005. That's right. Almost 20 years ago under the George W. Bush administration, literally denied a visa. So that brings up the vetting issue, which we've talked about time and time again. Someone denied a visa 20 years ago. I don't know. Maybe that could be a potential red flag for maybe not giving him a visa this time around. I don't know what the circumstance was, but I can tell you this. We got a major vetting problem and we have a major overstay problem with visas in this country because there's no doubt that is, in essence, if you can call it the number one culprit, it really is the overstay of visas here in the United States.
Yeah. And again, you had a mayor of Boulder who has been very lax in following up on anti-Semitic incidents, people who in the own city council of Boulder who made anti-Semitic statements, and there was no censure of that person by the mayor. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I want to reiterate the theory that I talked about at the beginning of the program. No, this attack was not predicated by the news reports, the lies about Israel. There was a lie over the weekend that said that Israel killed 31 people coming to get aid. It turned out Hamas did the killing, but CNN and the New York Times ran with it anyway. Of course they did. But when they see stories like this, David, they're already hateful people. That didn't make them hate, but it makes them think, oh, if I do the attack now, I'll get more support and I might get off. I might get excused for it more. That's the impetus. That's why you can't lie on television news.
You've said it all, Jake. We're running out of time, and I agree with everything you say. I'm going to donate to any sort of campaign that you've got going. I don't know. Do you have any campaign going?
Well, now I just want to have a good breakfast. David Brody, thanks so much for joining us. American Sunrise, the big show coming up for the next 2 hours. I'll see you tomorrow.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. Elon Musk, that his 130 days as a special government employee is about to expire. That's going to happen tomorrow. But David, I think the bigger story here is this trade court that came out and basically nixed, or at least put on ice, President Trump's tariffs.
I have 3 words. Those freaking judges. I mean, here they go again. And this is just a small en banc panel, just 2-1. But look, this is what the Trump administration is up against time and time again. And the Elon Musk story is also big. I mean, let's let's be honest. I think if it was going over better internally, he probably wouldn't be leaving just so quickly.
I think the man was like Atlas, taking the world on his shoulders. I mean, he's a private businessman. He's had successful businesses. He comes in to work on Doge. It was teased, and then now he did it. And we'll talk about it later in the show, but he's been the whipping boy, for so much, and I think undeservedly.
The framework is already set. I think the foundation is set. And so now you just kind of, I think, follow the roadmap. You don't necessarily need one person heading that up. President Trump heads that up, if you will. But the roadmap is there, and I think you just need people to continue to follow the roadmap, and more importantly, to codify and make this a consistent thing, not just a one-hit pony.
They came in so hot and did so many great things, and then they got so much pushback and stonewalled, and it was clear that Congress wasn't going to work with them.
He's left the building like Elvis. But before he left, he said he is disappointed with how the House budget bill, the budget reconciliation bill, came out.
Everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
This bill is incredibly pro-working class. It's incredibly pro-America, and it shows how important it is for Congress to get involved and ensure that what the Trump administration is doing has longevity and sustainability.
Let the negotiations begin. And anybody who's been in the private sector understands that when negotiations begin, they can be a little rough, they can be a little ugly, there's a lot of tension, but that is not a bad thing.
President Trump says he has discussed Iran with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and said he told Netanyahu not to take actions to disrupt these Iran nuclear talks that are currently going on.
Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution.
And he's just asking Netanyahu for a little bit of time, which they do have.
Just ahead this morning on American Sunrise, new reporting suggests that President Trump had some doubts about Elon Musk and how much he could save the federal government. We're going to get to the bottom of that. Plus, we have new details on the scale of President Trump's upcoming parade to honor the military. We have the updates for you. And finally, Iran has reportedly increased its nuclear stockpile. How much did it go up, and how many bombs can be made by the Islamic Republic in just a matter of weeks? We have these stories, so much more, as American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether
That's culture.
We have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina. Good morning. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C. And Emily Finn filling in for T. Bates. Emily, she is here in Palm Beach as well. Welcome to both of you. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Gina.
Good
Welcome
morning.
back to you. Happy to have you back with us.
Thank you so much. One in, one out. Interesting thing that I observed now as my second trip to Europe this year. Not a single, I'm a migraine sufferer, and I did not get a single migraine the entire time on either trip. I'm telling you all, there's something in our food. That's my takeaway from this trip. It was a wonderful trip, anniversary trip for my husband and me. Super fabulous. Saw F1, and happy to be back in the saddle, though, I have to tell you.
That's good. And listen, Gina, we're so excited to have you back. Just because you didn't get migraines in Europe, please don't move to Europe, please. And
Not
don't
moving
move
to
in
Europe.
with Rosie O'Donnell.
Listen, it's all
in
socialist.
Ireland.
Thank God for America. And so many people came up to us and told us that. And I will tell you, my husband sported his dark MAGA hat for all of F1. And we ended up right by Leonardo DiCaprio. And my husband made sure that he saw that hat. Oh, yes. Going to make sure.
Oh, what a story. That's awesome. I'm sure he loved that hat.
Oh, yeah. We're besties now.
Hey, Gina, here's a shock. There's been some news while you've been gone, obviously.
Fire hose.
And then, of course, right. And this morning, it's just not of the good kind at all.
No, it's not.
We have 8 injured. No, that 8 injured in Boulder.
Yeah.
In Granola Headland there, the liberal land. An Egyptian man. Yeah, that's right. He was here illegally.
Illegal.
Set fire to them at a pro-Israel rally. He was using like this makeshift flamethrower and was yelling "Free Palestine." It was at this Run for the Lives rally, and it was calling for the release of hostages. So, I mean, Gina, to me, look, this obviously goes to the illegal immigration issue, the sanctuary city issue. He was here, that the Biden administration let him in. But, in 2005, he was denied a visa by the George W. Bush administration. And so, of course, you would think that'd be a red flag. But no, of course, the Biden administration letting this guy in. Here we go. It's a broken record, Gina.
And there were reports that others around him almost seemed to be involved in this, that this was perhaps more of an orchestrated effort. And this is something I just want to say to our audience. Let's remember, it's not just the first they came for the Jews kind of a story, but it really is that, because honestly, your right to protest as an American is being terrorized. So let's not segregate this out to be a Jewish thing. This can happen if you want to express your opinion. And the whole point of this, in every single attack like this, is to squash your free speech, to intimidate you, to make it so you won't stand up for what you know is right. So let's be undaunted. I think that's the message that needs to come from this as well. Do we have reports yet, Emily, on whether someone actually died from this or not?
I believe that there were 8 injured in this incident. One person was very, very badly injured. I mean, I think the nature of this crime is the most shocking. This person brought a flamethrower. That is just really, really horrible to see. We are keeping a very close eye on reports to see the status of this person who was very severely injured from this attack, Gina. But we will update our audience as soon as we do have those details.
Yeah. Well, let's be praying for those folks.
Of course.
Did you have something else, David?
Oh, nothing. No, just toss it over to you, Gina. We missed you in the Bible verse. Well, we had the Bible verse, but it's just not the same.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. It's from Psalm 46:10 today. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. So true. One day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. It's just a matter of whether they'll be on his side or not before that. President Trump reportedly questioned Elon Musk on his dedication to spending cuts to fruition, bringing those to fruition in the government. The Wall Street Journal reports that Trump and top aides questioned how serious he was on his promises on cuts. They also note that they had spats on the Middle East and other issues. Musk left the Trump administration at the end of last week. For more, let's bring in RAP Chief White House Correspondent Brian Glenn. Brian, the question I have, though, is the establishment of Doge is such a good thing. And I think you can't take that credit away, in part at least, from Elon Musk. And that legacy lives even though he's gone. But what is the story here about some turmoil between Elon and the president?
Well, good morning. And welcome back, by the way.
Thank you.
It's good to be back here at the White House as well. When Doge was originally created and some of these numbers were thrown out as far as potential cuts, it did raise some eyebrows to what was realistic and were some of these numbers being exaggerated for whatever reason. And I think the original number of more than $1 trillion, I think will stand. And I think it's interesting to note here, Dr. Gina, that it said it will take some time to see these Doge cuts add up into the trillion. I remember reporting when Doge first started looking into things that we found, I think, $1.2 billion in Medicaid fraud, and even $1.2 billion seemed like a ton of waste, fraud, and abuse. And so that ended up being just kind of the beginning of what would become a numbers game. And the media loves to push back on some of these different amounts that are coming out and what's really realistic. But I do think, however, as the president said, Elon's not going anywhere for the most part. I mean, he's not going to be staying nights over at the White House any longer, but he's going to get back to running his companies. But I think Doge will continue to find this waste, fraud, and abuse. What the number will end up at the end, it will, hopefully it's closer to what was originally promised.
Yeah, the media is always exaggerating everything. I'm not saying there wasn't some friction at times, obviously, within the administration with Elon Musk. There's no doubt about that. But this idea that, there's this rift between Trump and Musk. Look, if there was a rift between Trump and Musk, he would be going somewhere, and that would be to the outhouse and never to return again. But right. He's coming back, so it's ridiculous. All right. Hey, Brian, let's move on to this other headline here, and it's, of course, about the military parade coming up in June. It's happening, by the way. We got tanks and trucks and howitzers from Texas. They're heading to D.C. for Trump's military parade. That's what they call it, Trump's military parade. You know, that's like code for it's on his birthday and it's all about him, which is ridiculous. But it's obviously meant to honor the military. So this could be like a $45 million price tag. You got also $16 million to fix the damage to roads because of all of these tanks rolling through D.C. Brian, what do you think? I mean, critics have called this a parade of authoritarian display of power. It's wasteful, especially as Trump is slashing through the federal government, trying to get rid of stuff. What's the sense there at the White House?
Well, I think the sense coming out of the White House is national pride and really honoring this country. They're going to have over 9,000 troops here in D.C., and many of them, 7,000 of them, will be in the actual parade. They're going to actually stay at some of these government buildings, Department of Education, going to stay in Joint Base Andrews as well. So going to house these troops in and around D.C. Now, when you put all of our weaponry on display for the world to see, that is a good thing. I think it's to celebrate the different eras in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War, the Revolutionary War. It's all going to be on display. David, I think the sense of American pride is at the forefront of this parade. It's celebrating who we are as a nation, our strength of our military. And yes, I do support Mayor Bowser's requests for potentially $16 million to redo some of the roads that this equipment could possibly damage. That's smart on her and her defense to ask for that, because clearly there will be a little bit of perhaps some altering of the roads as you move this equipment through. So, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a great day for America, a great day for D.C., and as they're expecting hundreds of thousands of people right here in the streets.
Absolutely, Brian. It's certainly going to be a sense of American pride. I'm sure we're going to have some viral moments. And we know that President Trump likes to weigh in on all viral moments. I'm sure you saw French President Emmanuel Macron had a little tiff with his wife recently. Video was going around on social media, and President Trump had some advice for him. Let's all listen into this.
This week, there was a video on board a plane that showed the First Lady of France slapping her husband, Emmanuel Macron. Do you have any world leader to world leader marital advice?
make sure the door remains closed.
Brian, too funny there. Now I am not married, but I can only imagine that you should have these kind of conversations behind closed doors. What do you make of that? Is that good advice, Brian?
That is great advice from the president, and the gentleman from Texas will second that advice as well. I will say this, though. Some of the global journalists, the way they've approached this story is very interesting. They actually think that Macron should have used this as a conversation starter about spousal abuse, about the reverse spousal abuse on women abusing their husbands. And if we were to reverse the roles here, let's say Macron was to, for whatever reason, we've seen his ham shove the first lady of France in the face. Imagine the conversations and imagine the political implications of that type of movement, that type of gesture, that type of aggressive violence towards the first lady. He might not even be the president of France today if you reverse the roles on that. Yeah. Also, I think it's very interesting the age gap of the two. I think she is 72, if I'm not mistaken. He's 47. I started dating when he was basically 15 years old, if you will, and she was a drama teacher. Reverse the roles on that. It would not be celebrated. It would be almost pedophilia, if you will. It's a very strange relationship. I think we all can agree on that. But physical abuse towards either spouse, either male or female, is not acceptable. And it's just interesting how the media has just kind of driven by this story.
Well, Brian, I'll tell you, it was very interesting being in France while all of that was happening. Very interesting.
Oh, I bet.
The points you make are so salient, and they should not be overlooked. You reverse the roles in a lot of this stuff. Even if this had been President Trump, I think it would have emasculated him for the rest of the country. But somehow, since it's France, people don't say anything. Anyway, Brian Glenn, great perspective here. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV newsroom with Emily Finn. And later, the Saudis are warning of potential consequences to Iran if they don't reach a nuclear deal with the U.S. What are they? Well, we're going to tell you just ahead on American Sunrise.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
West Palm Beach, what a shock. It's sunny. Come over here to the deep state, and it'll be cloudy and rainy, morally and otherwise. Actually, it's really nice today. Welcome back to American Sunrise, everybody. I'm David Brody. Coming up, Iran has been a bad boy. Iran is in timeout. The Trump administration is still trying to work with Iran regarding a nuclear deal, but there's some new information that could make the whole thing hit a snag. We will discuss that in a moment. First, though, the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Some top headlines we are keeping a close eye on today. Ukraine launches massive drone strikes against Russia. Officials say the strikes were on air bases deep inside of Russia, and they targeted several strategic bombers. Axios reports that the operation was codenamed Spiderweb. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said intelligence agents had been working for months inside of Russia to get this information. This comes as Zelensky announced he is sending a delegation to Turkey today for ceasefire talks with Russia. Meanwhile, President Trump announces he withdrew billionaire Jared Isaacman's nomination for NASA administrator. Trump said on Truth Social that this decision came after a review of prior associations, and he will soon announce a new nominee who is mission aligned. Isaacman had never been in government before, but he had been to space twice on private missions that he funded himself. And finally, hurricane season has officially begun. Forecasters predict there will be between 13 to 19 named storms. Of those 13 to 19, 6 to 10 are projected to become hurricanes, and 3 to 5 of those could become major hurricanes. If there are more than 21 named storms in one season, there's an alternate list of names that are set for use. Hurricane season lasts from June 1st until the end of November. All right, now coming up on American Sunrise, just how much enriched uranium does Iran have? We have that information ahead. And later, former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel speaks out against the Democratic Party. We also have his comments, but first, a quick look at today in history. It was on this day in 1953 that the coronation of then 25-year-old Queen Elizabeth II took place at Westminster Abbey in London, England. Elizabeth took an oath, was anointed with holy oil, invested with robes, and was crowned Queen of the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Elizabeth would reign for 70 years and 214 days, the longest of any British monarch in history.
Glory and righteousness, that having a right faith and manifold fruit of good works, you may obtain the crown of an everlasting kingdom by the gift of him whose kingdom endureth forever. Amen.
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the home of brotherly love, unless you're at an Eagles game and you're a visiting fan. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. All right, so the International Atomic Energy Agency issued a new report on Iran's uranium enrichment. Officials say that Iran has increased its stockpile to 900.8 pounds of enriched uranium as of the middle of last month. And the last report in February said Iran had just over 605 pounds. And the IAEA also said that it takes just 92 pounds of enriched uranium to make an atomic bomb. Iran is being a bad boy yet again. For more, let's bring in the U.S. Deputy Director for the National Council of Resistance to Iran, that'd be Alireza Jafarzadeh. Zare, excuse me. Knew I would mess it up. Darn it. Alireza, thanks for being here. All right. So, look, Iran and the IAEA has a long history. It's checkered. It's not good for Iran. What do you make of the latest here?
Well, as you said, David, there is a long history. And I remember that history because it was August of 2002 when we first revealed the nuclear site in Natanz uranium enrichment facility, which triggered the IAEA inspections of the Iranian nuclear sites since 2003 and has continued ever since. But when you look at the past 20 plus years is that there is a history of lies and deception and not responding to the IAEA, just playing games, not just with the IAEA, but with the international community. And the latest, you just said that the Iran regime has enriched uranium to way beyond peaceful level. Now they're enriching uranium to 60%, which is just a screwdriver's turn away from getting weapons-grade, material, fissile material, and that's enough for at least 10 bombs. In addition to that, the IAEA report talks about a number of serious violations of their non-proliferation treaty in at least 4 sites that shows that the Iran regime was not, working on peaceful program. Rather, they were doing tests that are implosion tests that are necessary for building an implosion nuclear bomb. They have lied consistently to the IAEA. The explanations they've given to the IAEA does not corroborate with the realities on the ground, and it has no scientific explanation. So that's where we stand with the Iran regime, and that's why it's so important to call for the closure of all of the nuclear sites of the Iran regime, including all of the enrichment-related activities that the Iran regime has been doing.
Well, we had the foreign policy expert for the Hudson Institute, Michael Duran, sharing his thoughts on what a good nuclear deal with Iran would exactly look like. So here's that commentary. Listen.
Ironclad deal means that Iran dismantles all of its nuclear infrastructure. So it gets rid of the ability to enrich on Iranian soil. It destroys these underground facilities like at Fordo that protect their centrifuges and other aspects of their program from being attacked. And it ends the pursuit of a warhead. It would also mean an end to their ballistic missiles.
How much of this do you estimate is actually likely to go into a deal?
Well, of course, when you ask the Iran regime, they're going to rebuff all of those steps because as of today, Tehran declaring that we're going to have our enrichment program. Not only that, but we want all of the sanctions imposed by the international community and the United States to be lifted. So you don't want to go that route because, Tehran wants to keep their nuclear weapons program, period. And the rest of the world want that nuclear weapons program dismantled, including the people of Iran who see the nuclear weapons as a guarantee for the survival of the Iran regime. That's why we've been opposed to this. We've been exposing all of these nuclear sites. Much of the resources of the nation are now expended on something that not only doesn't benefit the people of Iran, but is to their detriment. At least $2 trillion has been spent by the Iran regime on their nuclear weapons program, and they claim it's all for energy purposes. None of that is for energy purposes. That's why it's so important that all of the various components of nuclear weapons program of Iran are dismantled, including all of their enrichment activities, all of the weaponization activities, that is related to turning fissile material to nuclear warhead, but also their ballistic missile program, which is a part and parcel of their nuclear weapons program. All of that has to be dismantled. We just had new information back in May showing that there are new sites that the Iran regime has been using to develop nuclear weapons. So as we talk, the regime is expanding its nuclear weapons program, is elevating its enrichment program and all of their activities. The only way that can be stopped is for the United States to be firm, to be decisive, and make it very clear that there's only one way out of it for the Iran regime, and that is dismantling all of those nuclear sites.
Well, also Saudi Arabia is weighing in, warning Iran that they need to take a deal or fear a strike from Israel. So what are you hearing about all of this?
Well, I know there are a lot of players in the region who are not happy clearly with the nuclear weapons program of the Iran regime, because not only that serves the purpose of the survival of the regime, but also has been a major destabilizing factor in the region. The regime has used that also, the nuclear program, as leverage in dealing with their counterparts in the region. But the new reality on the ground in Iran and in the region is that this regime has never been so weak. They have lost their clout in the region. The biggest ally, Assad, is gone. Their proxies, Shia militias in Iraq, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, they have been, decimated. And the Iranian people, through protests and uprisings in Iran, have been protesting the regime. They want an end to the rule of the mullahs. As we speak, truck drivers are on strike. Different sectors of the society are opposed to it. And that's why I think everyone should realize that this regime is not 10 feet tall. This is a weak regime. They don't have leverage when they come to the negotiating table. So this is the time to ramp up pressure on the Iran regime rather than releasing pressure. Obviously, given the experience of the past, the only sure way to end the nuclear weapons program and also the terror threat of the Iran regime is a change in Iran, ending the rule of the clerics. And of course, that's the responsibility of the people of Iran and the organized resistance. What the outside world need to do, they need to hold the regime accountable and recognize the right of people to end the rule of their repressive rulers.
Alireza, we've been hearing this for a while, the streets of Iran, the youth of Iran rising up in certain different ways. There's a kind of an underground movement and a movement outwardly as well. What is it going to take? How can this happen? Will it happen? And what's the time frame on something like this? I know it's hard to say the time frame, but we've been hearing this for over a decade now, longer than that the youth of Iran is tired, sick and tired. When will this Iranian revolution happen?
Well, even though that has been going on, David, for a while, but you look at the trend, every time there is an uprising in Iran, it's longer lasting, it's more focused on change. It brings in different new sectors of the society. The last time you had, it was basically the poor, the deprived, the smaller towns and cities that were engulfed in the protests in all 31 provinces of the country. This used to be the bedrock of support for the mullahs. mullahs, that has changed. The economy has been in shambles, and the value of currency has been going down. There is systematic corruption, and people see the Revolutionary Guards, who are not just only the repressor of the people, but also they're controlling the economy. It's gotten to a point that the regime finds no solution other than killing its own people. You know, since last August, when Pezeshkian, the new president of the regime, took office, nearly 1,300 prisoners have been executed, including women and political prisoners. These are all signs of a very weak and unstable regime. Now, you know, you can never determine, you know, what that point is when the regime is overthrown, and what it takes, what triggers the developments. But one thing you know is that the outside world does have its own role to play. You don't want to give the money to the mullahs because they use it to further strengthen themselves. You don't want to relieve pressure on them. You don't want to recognize the legitimacy of the mullahs. To the contrary, it makes a huge difference if the outside world sides with the people of Iran, saying that, you know, the Iranian people have the right to confront the Revolutionary Guards. You know, there was a resolution just this past week in the House that had the support of the House majority, 225 members from both sides of the aisle, supported the platform for a future Iran that is known as the 10-point platform of the Iranian opposition leader, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, that calls for suppression of religion and state, gender equality, freedom of press, and peace in the Middle East, and a non-nuclear republic form of government in Iran. So there is a platform, there is an organized resistance. The question is, where do you invest? Do you invest on the regime or on the people? And I think the Congress suggests it should be the people of Iran.
Makes sense. We got to have you back. We got to run up against a break. Alireza Jafar Raze, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, David. Always a pleasure.
All right, coming up, your health in moments. Details of a major breakthrough in the fight against breast cancer as American Sunrise continues.
Beautiful view of Dallas, Texas this morning. We give a big shout out to our audience there. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thank you for joining us. It is time now for today's health news. And this is, of course, sponsored by The Wellness Company. Under the microscope today, breakthrough in breast cancer treatment. There are 2 new drugs and a new therapy for treating breast cancer. The 2 new drugs are called inavolisib. That's the first one. I know these are difficult. And palbociclib, right? So those are the 2 names, and there's a new hormone therapy as well. They've reportedly improved overall survival of breast cancer by 7 months, and it delayed progression by 17.2 months. Now, the 2 drugs reportedly delayed the need for chemotherapy treatments. So these are new, exciting changes. But I'm telling you what, guys, after being at that MAHA convention I went to a couple weeks ago, there's a cure out there for almost all cancer, if not all cancer, and is coming at you. And it may not be very drug related. It might be more of a therapeutic. I'm just saying. Anyway, that's my prediction. A new administration in Washington, D.C., a lot of new positive changes when it comes to fixing what is broken in our healthcare system. The reality is, however, there's a lot government can do, and that if we really want to make America healthy again, it starts at home with each and every one of you and us. And that's where the Wellness Company comes in. You see and hear from TWC doctors on this network all of the time, and you know that their products are the gold standard for keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with a series of prescription medical kits. Now, these kits, of course, have life-saving medications inside them and guidebooks to tell you how to use the medications in the kits. Now, additionally, the Wellness Company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue, which I take every day, to weight loss and so much more. It can help you stay healthy and live a longer and more satisfying life. So make America healthy again. You guys, it starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV today. Give it an order. That's twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV. That'll save you 10%. David, Brody, D-Bro, you take methylene blue?
No, I don't. I guess
big energy booster, and you host a morning show. I'm just putting some dots together and saying the Wellness Company's got you. I got a guy.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You know a guy. All right. Yeah. Just as long as you don't sell me a watch in Times Square, I appreciate it. All right.
Hey, I know a good guy.
Well, I got to hear the whole. What'd you say? You know a guy?
I know a good guy.
You say you know a guy?
Yeah, a guy tracks in New York.
Oh, that's right. You do know a guy.
He's fantastic. Anyway, go ahead. Carry on. We have a show to do.
Yeah, we really do. Sorry, we got sidetracked. All right, the White House says it is sending some of the DOGE cuts over to Congress in efforts of making them permanent. Officials say there's a big package of rescissions heading over to the House this week. OMB Director Russ Vought said this bill shouldn't be at risk of being filibustered. And, of course, it comes after the head of DOGE, Elon Musk, left the Trump administration. Just like Elvis has left the building, so has Elon Musk. For more, let's bring in the Daily Signal managing editor, Tyler O'Neill, who joins us now on the big show. Hey, Tyler, so this is the deal, right? I mean, it's going to primarily target federal funding to NPR, PBS, USAID. That's about $9.4 billion or so. So basically what the White House is doing here, they're trying to get Congress to cancel the funding that Congress already appropriated.
Yes. Yeah. So, and this is key in order to not fund some of these many times ideologically captured leftist funding, streams, because Congress passed the funding for them originally, Congress is usually the one that has to actually pull it all the way back from start to finish. The Trump administration is freezing a lot of these programs, but in order to make it permanent and make it really effective, often Congress has to say, look, we said the federal government should spend, now we're changing our minds, and here's where we're clawing it back.
Tyler, I remember in the Tea Party movement, Andrew Breitbart saying, we didn't necessarily want to have a leader of the Tea Party, somebody that we elected or somebody, because you don't want to have the enemy be able to cut off the head of the octopus, right? You want it to be about all the tentacles, right? And so are we better off without Elon at the helm, or does that figurehead position need to be replaced? And if so, who would you see rising up to that?
Well, I really like Russ Vought taking that position. I mean, Russ Vought hit the ground running at OMB in the last administration. He is a change maker, and he's got the mindset to really cut the waste and abuse in Washington. So I think it has been fantastic that Elon was at the head of Doge at the beginning. He was able to get the messaging out there, draw all the attention, and make it clear that this is a priority for this new administration. But now what we need is a little bit more somebody who's just going to get down into the brass tacks, go through all the nuts and bolts of exactly what needs to be changed and do it specifically. And that's not to say Elon couldn't do that. He was able to do a lot of good work there, but he doesn't come from a policy background. He comes from a shake 'em up, drag him out. You know, what he did to Twitter, now X, shows that he has the right mindset. But once you get the mindset set, you have the ball rolling. Now you need somebody who's a little bit more down to earth to finish it off. And I think that's why it's really positive to see Russ Vought taking over. Not to say Elon didn't do a great job. And I think Elon has a tremendous role going forward here too, in continuing to breathe air into this really important effort, because Doge, I know Doge is going to sunset next year, but the actual process of keeping the government lean, mean, and effective and cutting out this waste, fraud, and abuse, that's not going to be over by July 4th of next year.
Interesting. So you don't think it needs to be somebody as dynamic and perhaps even polarizing as Elon. You think a policy person at this point, season for everything, as the Bible says. Interesting analysis, Tyler. Thanks for being on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Former Obama Chief of Staff and Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel says the Democrat Party is weak and woke. Can anyone change it? We take a look next here on American Sunrise.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. Do you want to drink cafe quality coffee at home without the price tag or the compromise? Well, 1775 Starter Kit is packed with value and built for people who care about what they support. You'll get 3 bags of coffee, 2 16 ounces of your choice, dark or medium roast, plus their longevity blend infused with anti-aging CAAKG, which is clinically shown to support healthy aging and reduce biological age. You cover 2 bags and 1775 covers the rest. That's a full 16-ounce bag of coffee plus premium gear, a matte black tumbler, frother, gold scoop, or reusable K-cup filter. Whether you drink whole bean, ground, or pods, it's your call. You get to build the bundle. The coffee is organic, single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. It's smooth, clean, with no jitters, no crash, and no bitterness. It's just good coffee. All that for less than $1 a cup, made with integrity and delivered with purpose. So make sure you head to 1775coffee.com/Rav and grab your starter kit while it's still available. All right, now that we are caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. And former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, he's waking up. Emanuel is now saying that the Democratic Party is weak and woke. Emanuel said the party platform is toxic and it needs to get back to basics. He also told the Wall Street Journal that they need to focus on education and not woke ideology. There have been reports that Emanuel is weighing a White House run in 2028. Let's bring in David and Dr. Gina for more here. You know, if I didn't know any better, just listening to those quotes that he had in the Wall Street Journal, I would say he would be running as a Republican. I mean, maybe this is the savior for the Democrat Party, someone who thinks that they're weak and woke. You got to clean it up, Dr. Gina.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the only message that is going to help the Democrats. And I don't know if the Democrats are... If the Democrat people, the people who, you know, their grandpa was a Democrat, maybe they're in a union, you know, they've got their reasons for, you know, that strong hold and commitment to the Democrat Party. My great-grandmother was one of them, very conservative Democrat. But, you know, at the same time, the problem is that the money and the establishment who make all the rules in the Democrat Party, we've seen it, they set the agenda, right? They're the ones who put the planks in the platform, Emily and David, and so that's what becomes the Democrat Party. So since there's an organized apparatus, it makes it very hard to change. And right now, you have the farthest left, California Democrats who run everything and have all the money and all the access to all the purse strings. So I don't know how you do it. If I were a Democrat advisor today, I wouldn't know what to tell the Democrats. They're in a bad place. We can't say what I'm really thinking on TV, David.
Yeah, do not trust Rahm Emanuel. This idea that it sounds like a Republican talking point is just hogwash. It just is. Let's give him some credit, which is that he's old school. Which for Democrats is good. That's where they need to go back to. You know, he was with obviously Bill Clinton. He was Bill Clinton's chief of staff. And, you know, he remembers when there were moderate blue dogs, which we talk about all the time here. And he wants to get back to that in terms of the message that can bring in both the far left and the blue dogs. But the problem is you can't do it in today's Democrat Party. And the other problem here is that it's a message for Rahm Emanuel. In other words, it's more like a message and a strategy, but it's not really core what he believes. He's a liberal. He's a progressive, and his mayor in Chicago, as mayor of Chicago, I mean, his record will be torn apart, everything from crime and otherwise. So this idea that he's going to be any sort of serious candidate for 2028, I'm not saying he won't run, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a track record in terms of impressive credentials. But once that's all picked apart, I don't think it's going to happen. Because the thing is, it's not, the Democrats keep talking about strategy and messaging, but what their problem inherently is what they really truly believe. That's the problem. You know, with Trump, MAGA is MAGA because MAGA's authentic. You know, MAGA, we really want to change the world, so to speak. Well, actually, why don't you just change America? Actually, not the world. But the point is that the world is listening. That's for sure. And that's the difference. There's a big difference. Trump is extremely authentic. Rahm Emanuel is just trying to get a message out to see what will be poll tested. And
Which
that's not going to work.
Which is why the Democrats know that they need new blood, but they can't get new blood because of the institutional knowledge of the establishment that's already there. So it is complicated. But one of the things about Emmanuel and his motives, I think I always try to tell everybody, look at motives, look at motives. You could have predicted Trump if in 2015 you looked at solely motives and didn't listen to any of the clamor. Block it all, look at motives. Motives for Emmanuel. Look, when you run for office, and this is in both parties, frankly, you run for office, it's a horrible thing to do. I mean, it's a big, big burden to do it. But when you do it, it invigorates a career. It invigorates a career. It gets you appointments. It gets you clients if you're a consultant or an attorney or any of those kinds of things. So it's almost always a productive thing for a career. So, his career is a little wanton right now. Oh, you can write a book, by the way, that too. So lots of reasons, Emily, to motivate Rahm Emanuel other than actual victory.
Absolutely. And again, David, I think you bring up a really good point. It's not just the messaging. They're focused way too much on the messaging. They have to really focus on why the policies and why the values of the party aren't resonating, with the American people. But to your point, Gina, that's right. I mean, this is the perfect messaging that the party needs right now after getting beat so bad in the November 2024 presidential election. Of course, they have to take a look in the mirror and decide, how are we going to try not to be weak and woke anymore? But at the end of the day, if you're not going to actually do the work and make the changes to your policies, it's just messaging. So great discussion, you guys. Coming up, we have a lot more for you on American Sunrise. Presidents past and present have had elements of faith in their administrations. A new book lays out just how that has happened, and we take a look next on American Sunrise.
God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. Time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, prayers for world leaders is a common practice among churchgoers to inspire peacefully policy making for all. But imagine being in the shoes of a sitting president. How do leaders pray? Do they ask for strength to make decisions with God's teachings at the forefront? Do they look for signs from heaven as guidance? Well, that's exactly what Prayers of the Presidents from the Oval Office explores. From George Washington to President Trump, our nation's top leaders have offered prayers of gratitude and thanksgiving for America's blessings, as well as pleas for discernment, justice, and mercy while serving as commander-in-chief. Let's welcome in to discuss this more to American Sunrise, Dr. Larry Kefauver, author of the book, Prayers of the President from the Oval Office. Doctor, the good doctor, thanks for being here. I see you got the book there. Is that the book do I see the book there? I think there it is.
The book, yeah.
Yeah, tell us more about that book you hold in your hand. Congratulations, and it's an important one for sure.
The book started out in 2012 with Bridge Logos Publishers, and they came to me and said, there's a lot of talk about the faith of the early presidents, and the publisher came and said, can you do a book that talks about how the presidents prayed and their faith and so forth? And so it was put together then and has had a couple more editions until finally, after Trump was elected, we came out with an edition that premiered in January, actually came out to the bookstores and Amazon and all right after the inauguration.
What are some of the themes? You've got President Trump now, but GW, I call him GW, he was a good friend of mine. I texted him back in the day. So what's the deal? What are the themes between George Washington and Trump and everything in between in terms of the prayers of these presidents?
Washington sort of set the tone for everything. He had a daily prayer journal. And that's what I have opened up here. Every day we have the account when he was going through kinds of battles. He would keep a prayer journal of what he was praying. And this is the daily prayer of George Washington. And I just like to pull out, we make it our earnest prayer that thou will keep the United States in thy holy protection. And this is national security. He's praying for national security before he's president, before he understands, of course, that we're going to have three levels of government and so forth. And then he goes, incline our hearts to a spirit of subordination and obedience to government. And look at all the rebellion that's going on right now across the culture. People are fighting institutions and values and not understanding that we are under the protection, but also the providence and the sovereignty of God. Washington was very careful to understand that the author of our culture and the values was God himself.
Yeah, wow. Words of prayerful wisdom in the book for sure. Dr. Larry Kefauver, really appreciate it. I guess they can go to Amazon and get the book or wherever books are sold, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right. Prayers of the Presidents. There it is. Thanks for being here, and I'm glad you wrote this book.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right. We're back with the second hour of American Sunrise in 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Coming up on the second hour of American Sunrise, the United States sends Iran a nuclear deal, one that the Trump administration says is in Tehran's best interest to accept. But will Iran agree to do it? As reports say, it could take the Islamic Republic less than 2 weeks to convert enough weapons-grade material for a nuclear weapon. We'll discuss. Plus, Ukraine and Russia ready to have their next round of peace talks today. Will anything come out of the meeting in Istanbul after Ukraine's blitz on Russian bombers? We'll find out. Also, now that Tesla CEO Elon Musk has left the White House, will the Trump administration and Congress codify Doge wasteful spending cuts? The details next, just ahead. Hour 2 of American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrance.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Dr. G back with us. She's in West Palm. Emily Finn, also in our Palm Beach studios. Good morning to you, ladies. Can I just say over the weekend, specifically yesterday, I played golf. I got up at a godly hour at 6 a.m. Oh, my God. I was with my sons. Yes, it was a man's day. It was a misogyny Sunday. And so we were just playing. And can I just tell you, I played 18 holes of golf, and then they wanted me to play this knockout basketball game where you just have to knock out whatever. Can I just tell you, I'm literally in traction this morning. Like this arm that you see, this is all I can do. I can't move any other body part, Gina.
Well, you're doing all right with your mouth, so it's working.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Gina. Oh, how are you both, by the way?
Good to be back with you guys. French Riviera, Côte d'Azur, beautiful place. Somebody said, why don't you just go to the Keys? And I do. I go to the Keys a lot. I love the Keys. Mountains, French food. But, I will say you see the impact in just the years since we actually honeymooned there. That's why we went back there. This was our 35th wedding anniversary. And the changes from socialism, illegal immigration, and Islamism, I'm telling you, you see it in the major cities. Not as much on the French Riviera, but a little bit in Nice. Nice had changed dramatically since we were there on our honeymoon. And, it's sad, but somebody else pointed out in our chat today, Emily, it's happening here, too. It's not just happening there, but socialism really lends itself to quick destruction. And how sad. Such a beautiful area, all the medieval architecture, the mountains, I've never seen anything like it, the flowers just wafting incessantly. And all that could easily be destroyed with just the wrong governance for a very short period of time. Why we have to be so diligent.
Absolutely. Got to protect it. Got to protect all of the beauty that is in that area of the world. I'm so happy that you enjoyed your vacation, Gina, and happy that you enjoyed your golf. David, I must admit, you guys had much better weekends than I did. I was actually working. I was getting the show ready for us last night. And man, do we have a lot of big headlines to get to. It was a very, very busy news weekend. So let's dive right into it, you guys. Ahead of peace talks between Ukrainian and Russian officials in Istanbul today, Ukraine's military launched a massive attack against 5 air bases inside Russia over the weekend. The Ukraine military smuggled drones into strategic Russian airfields, wiping out nearly 1/3 of the country's cruise missile carriers. Ukraine using more than 100 drones to carry out the wide-reaching military operation, and Moscow calling the operation a terrorist attack, as those negotiations to end the war are now stalled. Meanwhile, police in Boulder, Colorado are releasing new details about a suspect who set people on fire during a Jewish community event. It was shocking. At least 8 people were injured when the suspect used a flamethrower and Molotov cocktails to set the event in flames. The FBI has identified the attacker, who allegedly yelled "Free Palestine" while carrying out the crime and was living in the United States on an overstayed tourist visa. He's now facing multiple felony charges as Jewish leaders across the world condemn the anti-Semitic attack. And the race is on in New Jersey to elect the state's next governor. Early in-person voting for both the Republicans and Democrats start on Tuesday ahead of the June 10th primaries. Sitting Governor Phil Murphy has hit his term limits, with his open seat sparking a contentious race on both sides, leading to the general election. New Jersey and Virginia are the only states with gubernatorial elections this year, and each state's results could indicate voter sentiment ahead of the midterms. Gina, David, I know we all are going to be keeping a close eye on that, especially with everything we were just talking about in the last hour of the state of the Democrat Party. Going to be keeping a close eye to see if they're going to be making any gains.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. So now let's move on. And the United States has sent Iran a nuclear deal. It comes amid a report by the UN nuclear watchdog saying Tehran has ramped up its production of enriched uranium. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Saturday it was in Iran's, quote, best interest to accept the deal. Joining us now to discuss all of this is Robert Charles, a former Assistant Secretary of State and a candidate for governor of Maine. Robert, also an AMAC spokesperson, which we know very well. Robert, good to see you. So, Iran, yeah, we can trust them. I can trust them about as far as I can throw them. And that's not very far, especially because I'm in traction this morning. Good morning, Robert. What do you think?
Well, I heard about your traction, and I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
This is really brinksmanship. I mean, what Iran is responding to is the fact that Trump has very thoroughly defended Israel. There's no light between Israel and the United States. So what that means is what Israel has to do to Hamas, they will do. Ultimately, if they have to take action against Hezbollah and the Houthi in more aggressive terms, that will be supported. And you have to remember, those are all proxies to and for Iran. And so Iran is in a box in some ways. They have almost no leverage because at this stage of the game, Trump has ramped up sanctions again on them. They have a restless people. Probably 85% of their population is restless right now. So what are they doing? They have previously brought their uranium to 60% enrichment. This is like looking for leverage in a negotiation by pretending you've got more than you've got. They have doubled the amount of 60% enriched uranium in the last several weeks. Okay, so we monitor that. We see that. We can also infer some other bad acts on their part. Is that going to get them to a better place? I don't think so. Could they break out? I mean, what they're really trying to do is either break out or threaten a breakout in the coming weeks. And what would that mean? That would mean that they would actually have weapons-grade uranium. What it would not mean is that they have a delivery system that would take at least 4, 5, 6 weeks, maybe a couple of months to deliver. But, at the end of the day, this is really just Iran trying to say, hey, we've got something here. President Trump cut us a break. President Trump is not going to cut them a break. They deserve no breaks. They are a ruthless, horrible, terror-supporting country, and they have done nothing but damage to the rest of the world. So I think their days, in terms of this deal, there's no leverage. Their days are in some ways numbered. They're going to have to negotiate something or break out. And if they break out, Israel and the United States will address that.
Well, other threats coming from east of us. Next round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine set to be held in Istanbul, and that is today. But tensions are high after Ukraine said yesterday it had destroyed Russian bombers worth billions of dollars as far away as Siberia in its longest range assault of the war. Reports state this operation, called Spiderweb, was a year and a half in the making, and in total it is being reported that 41 Russian heavy bombers at 4 airfields were hit. What's next, and what do you think will come of these talks, if anything?
If you remember the end of the Vietnam War, there was a ramping up of kinetic activity. There were bombings in Hanoi, et cetera. Both sides in this negotiation are looking for some kind of leverage that would give them some at least transient benefit in a negotiation. I would argue that this is suggesting that negotiations are closer. However, the problem with brinksmanship, the problem with escalation, is that it can get out of control. The fastest guy around the curve can win the race, but if you lose the curve, you lose more than the race. So this is a very tough moment because Ukraine is trying to step up with some, show of leverage, and Russia is trying to step up with some show of leverage. The truth is you have two very wounded societies. You have two very wounded militaries. You have no good end in continued conflict. So Donald Trump was right. What Donald Trump is doing is providing the bridge for them to get out of this conflict. And ultimately, I've always thought July 4th was a rough date going back to the beginning of this year when they might come to terms. But they, they're both looking for kinetic advantage, and that can be dangerous.
You know, Robert, we said goodbye to Elon Musk last week. He departed the White House, departed his role with Doge after getting that off the ground. But the White House and Congress are now unveiling plans to codify the Doge cuts. There's $9.4 billion of cuts that they've identified going into a bill that's expected to reach Congress this week. Elon Musk, his time in government has ended here. This is just part one of all of the cuts that he was able to identify, this more than $9 billion here. I think this is a good start. What is your take on all of this, Robert?
Well, my take is I'd like to hire him right away, bring him to Maine, and make him one of the first guys that helps me put a Doge on the ground in Maine. But the truth is, I did oversight for 5 years and actually downsized and dramatically changed the structure of one big piece of the federal government. This stuff only works if you codify it in legislation. So, by the way, just the same thing up here in Maine. We have probably more waste and public corruption up in Maine proportionally than there is even in the federal government. But if you don't get after it and codify it with control of Congress when you've got it, you lose the benefit. At the end of the day, executive orders only last, as we all know, as long as the executive is in control. So what Elon Musk has done is a more successful effort than the Grace Commission under President Reagan. What needs to happen next, just like it will need to happen in Maine if we can win the House and the Senate back, we're only a couple of seats away. And if I'm governor, we will do exactly the same thing here. What we need to do is codify that so that the American people at the national level can bear with me. Are we there?
You're there. We see you.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We see you.
So the American people can fully get the benefit of what President Trump has done beyond the era of his leadership.
Yeah. Hey, Robert, before we let you go, Governor of Maine, you're running for the big position there. Tell us more about it. Give us the terrain. Give us the lay of the land there. We got less than a minute.
Yeah, so I can give it to you in less than a minute. First, I'd love to have anybody go to bobbyformaine.com who wants a conservative to run the state of Maine and to turn this state red. We are this close to it right now. We are very, very favorably responded to in all 16 counties. The momentum is huge. We've had some great endorsements. We have more piled up, and people are contributing. People are ready for change, and I would argue that 2026 in Maine will look a lot like 2024 nationally. We will pull the swing counties just the way President Trump pulled the swing states.
Well, speaking of pull, we're pulling for you. Good luck to you, Bob. Bobby.
Thank you.
Robert Charles.
Yes, sir.
Bobby
yes,
from
sir.
Maine. All right. Sounds good.
Bobby from Maine.
Appreciate you. All right, coming up, Deputy FBI Director Dan Bongino gets today's honor of flushing out the swamp. Why he says important cultural changes are coming within the FBI. That is ahead. Also, what actions has President Trump taken to restore the country's cultural and historical heritage? Well, you can find that answer out when American Sunrise returns. We're back in a moment.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. It's great to have you with us this morning. Time now to drain the swamp. And this morning, we are flushing out, we are actually giving FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino the honor for pulling the lever on today's flush. I am so used to doing it myself, but Bongino is removing FBI employees who are contributing to the woke culture at the Bureau. In a post on X, Bongino specifically mentioned hiring process updates, stricter physical fitness requirements, and more as part of larger changes to strengthen the FBI. He says, quote, the accountability process is ongoing as we move disciplined and focused leaders into critical positions in the field. Bongino added, which is key, quote, we are removing employees who have violated their oaths and those who invited partisanship into the workplace. The process is ongoing and will not stop. Let's bring in Dr. Gina and David for more here. I think Bongino certainly gets the honor of draining the swamp and doing the flush for us today, doing incredible work there, Gina. I think you have to identify where all of the woke nonsense is.
And so long overdue, David and Emily. This is exciting things. These are exciting things, and could forever impact. I mean, this didn't happen overnight. So if the cleansing that he does of all of the bad, right, flushing them all out of there, if it's thorough, almost no matter what happens, it would take decades for the left to build them back up. So this is a very positive thing to hear, a very positive step in the right direction. I hope this flushing is deep and severe, David.
Yeah, and you make some really good points there, Gina, especially about the longevity of this, because, look, regarding President Trump, everybody's like, oh, you know, the FBI was out to get Trump back in the day. Totally true. I say back in the day. It's not that long ago, right? And even today, they're out to get him, even though, you know, we've got some good guys in there now, but there's deep state plants in there for sure. But here's the thing. I mean, if you look back, the FBI has always been political. I mean, this has been going on for a very long time. So this idea that this is any new phenomenon is not true. I mean, you had J. Edgar Hoover, who was at the FBI for 37 years. Remember, a lot of people think of J. Edgar Hoover with Kennedy, right, in the 60s. Yeah, he was there for 37 years, starting with FDR. Okay, so if you look at FDR, he was going after Charles Lindbergh, back in the mid-30s, because Lindbergh was an intervention or anti-interventionist. He did not want to go into World War II. And so J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI were spying on him. They were wiretapping things back, or wiretapping, air quote, wiretapping, whatever that looked like in the mid-30s back in the day. So this idea the FBI doesn't go after political opponents directed by presidents of the United States is hogwash. It's happened. I mean, FDR in essence, directed Hoover to do that, Charles Lindbergh. So, I mean, it's just kind of interesting that we have this idea that this is all kind of against Trump and its politics today. All true. But let's also remember the FBI history. This goes back a very long time.
Absolutely. And I think everything happening with Trump is just, you know, kind of on display right now. You know, people that are in the MAGA movement have been very vocal about how unfair it is and how unfair the FBI has been for so long, as you point out, David. So thank God for both Bongino and Kash Patel for finally bringing this all to light. All right, we want to know what you think. Let us know on Rumble or Getter. Hop on and let your voice be heard. Coming up on American Sunrise, does a new month make visitors eager to continue putting their finances in America's economy? A live look at the big board is next. Also, how is Trump restoring America's cultural and historical heritage? Find out later in the show. Much more to come on American Sunrise. Stay tuned. Welcome back to American Sunrise, taking a live look at Atlanta, Georgia this morning. We are also taking a look at the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring in just a few minutes, but as we wait, let's take a quick look at the futures. 3 major indices are in the red today. They are down. Dow Jones down about 120 points, S&P about 20 points down, and the NASDAQ down about 100 points. Looks like it's going to be a bit of a tough day in the market, but we will continue to keep a close eye on the bell. Let's send it over to David in the meantime.
All right, we'll get back to you in a moment. Thank you. Since being reelected, President Trump has signed many executive orders. In doing so, he also wants to restore the erosion of the country's cultural and historical heritage. One of them includes improving education outcomes by empowering parents and states and communities. Trump signed an executive order on March 20th that started the process of shutting down the Department of Education. That order also calls for withholding federal money from programs related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, or promoting gender ideology. Let's bring in presidential historian Craig Shirley, who's written many books, 5, of course, about former President Ronald Reagan, and his latest, of course, is The Search for Reagan, The Appealing Intellectual Conservatism of Ronald Reagan. Craig, I see you there, and I see your book there as well. Good to see you. So let's talk about Trump has really been promoting the historical and cultural national identity of America. The liberals can't stand it, but I'm wondering historically, have we seen other presidents try to do this? I'm assuming we have, but Trump always seems to do things bigger and grander.
Well, thank you, David. You know, all presidents up until Joe Biden actually celebrated American history and made it a central part of their administration because they knew, you know, those who failed to study history, like George Santayana said, those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it. And one significant event I can think of is that, you know, in 1979, Jimmy Carter said that Afghanistan, in an interview with Barbara Walters, she said Afghanistan was not in our defensive perimeter. Within months, the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. And Joe Biden committed the same faux pas when he said that Ukraine was not part of our defensive perimeter. And then again, the Russians invaded Ukraine. So in a very real and practical sense, we have to study history so we don't make the same mistakes. And I think that's, you know, Donald Trump is to be commended for that because he's restoring, you got to ask some, if you got to ask, common sense has to take hold. We've had the Department of Education for 40 years and our students have gotten stupider. They've gone down in SAT scores. They've gone up in left-wing political activism. And that's all the Department of Education was a factory for manufacturing hate and ignorance. And that's why it needs to be destroyed. And Donald Trump is practicing federalism to a perfect pitch by sending it back to the states and allowing parents, like you said, David, allowing parents and local school educators to decide what should go into their curriculum. You know, a lot of states have given up their state history, and it is so important to learn about not just national history, but their own state history as well.
You know, it's so interesting to kind of examine President Trump on kind of a Dr. Phil type level. I mean, he's always going old. When I say old school, like, for example, he talks about Patton, you know, how much he loved Patton. He talks about the Panama Canal. You know, we had all these people die building the Panama Canal. Like it's all filtered through his love for America. And I remember him holding the CPAC, or, you know, embracing the flag, the American flag at CPAC, you know, that type of thing. It's just he has this yesteryear component to him that is so refreshing in a day and age where everything just seems like where the progressives just want to rewrite American history.
You know, it was once said about Ronald Reagan that he was nostalgic for the future. And I think Donald Trump is the same way, is that it is possible to hold both, to cherish the history and to be the candidate or the president of the future. I think it's possible to carry forward the best of America while trying to improve America. I think you can do both. Unlike where the Democrats now find themselves, is that they're completely overwhelmed by Donald Trump and the issues. Is that Donald Trump has the corner. Donald Trump and the Republicans have the corner on ideas, including, not just the border, not just inflation, not just crime, but also on the cultural history of America and America's parents going forward.
You know, Craig, the differences between Trump and Reagan, honestly, I see more similarities here.
Yes.
Reagan, right, the shining city on a hill. With Trump, there is a shining optimism as well to President Trump. A lot of people,
the golden age, golden age.
100%. A lot of people talk about him in the media as kind of like, oh, he's this negative guy, he's this mean-spirited guy. Actually, no, he loves America so much. And it's more like a can-do spirit as well. He's always talking about you can do it. That's just not just from an American standpoint, but just from like a personal standpoint. He's an encourager to people. He really thinks that you can when you put your mind to it, you can do anything. 30 seconds here.
I wrote a piece last week on the similarities between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. They're different as men, obviously. They're different character. But in terms of their spirit, their optimism, their goals, their presidencies, there's a lot of similarities to be found between the two.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And one of them is definitely with the media, and Trump, yes. Reagan used a butter knife with the media. Trump uses a chainsaw, but they both they play them both to like a fiddle, for sure. Craig Shirley, great to have you on the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you, David. Have a good week.
All right. You too. You got the best Skype shot on the show. You always do. Just so you know. Not that there's money for that. I'm sorry. All right. Heading back now to West Palm. It's time for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
Well, tax day may have passed, but for the millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the Okay, and we are standing by for the opening bell on the New York Stock Exchange. There you can see Diamond Rock Hospitality ringing the bell. They are celebrating their 20th anniversary of their listing today. To honor the occasion, CEO Jeff Donnelly is there ringing the bell. A great moment for them. Let's take a quick look at the major indices as we open up the markets today. The Dow is down 169 points, S&P 500 down 17 points, and the Nasdaq is down 39 points. Bit of a rough day to start out here in the market. Now, tax day may have passed, but for millions of Americans, the real trouble is just beginning. If you missed the April 15th deadline or still owe back taxes, the IRS is ramping up enforcement. Every day you wait only makes things worse. So with over 5,000 new tax liens filed daily and tools like property seizures, bank levies, and wage garnishments, the IRS is applying pressure at levels that we haven't seen in years. Increased administrative scrutiny means collections are moving fast. But the good news? There's still time for Tax Network USA to help. Self-employed or a business owner, even if your books are a mess, they've got you covered. Tax Network USA specializes in cleaning up financial chaos and getting you back on track fast. Even after the deadline, it's not too late to regain control. Your consultation is completely free, and acting now could stop penalties, threatening letters, and surprise levies before they escalate. Call 1-800-905-8000 or visit tnusa.com/RAV. You may have missed April 15th, but you haven't run out of options. Let Tax Network USA help before the IRS makes the next move. There is still a lot more to come on American Sunrise. President Donald Trump's polling numbers are seeing a boost in one particular group of Americans. Who are they? Well, the answer is ahead. Plus, after this video of French President Emmanuel Macron being pushed in the face by his wife went viral, President Trump has offered his advice to his French counterpart. His comments and so much more as American Sunrise continues. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to join in our conversation on Getter and Rumble. It is time now to take the political pulse of America. The Beat today, new poll numbers show men approve of the job President Donald Trump is doing for the country. YouGov, an economist poll done in Midway, shows President Trump's approval rating with men stands at 50%, while 45% disapprove. Those are the beta men. Wait, was that my outside voice? All right, it is up 4%, these numbers, from the same poll done at the end of April. This all comes after Trump's polling took a hit following his Liberation Day tariffs. Meanwhile, Trump was recently questioned about his marital advice to French President Emmanuel Macron following this video of Macron's wife seen punching him in the face. Trump says, maybe actually it's more like a slap, right? More like a slap, or a not so gentle push, right? Well, anyway, President Trump said this. He said, make sure the door remains closed. That is not good. Watch this.
Make sure the door remains closed. That was not good. That was not good. No, I spoke to him, and he's fine. Too. They're fine. They're two really good people. I know them very well. And I don't know what that was all about, but I know them very well, and they're fine.
All right, well, let's talk about this some more with former Reagan policy advisor Dinesh D'Souza. He's also an author, a filmmaker, the host of the Dinesh D'Souza podcast. Dinesh, longtime friends. I remember interviewing you, I think, gosh, I want to say like 20 years ago. It's been a little while, but back in the Tea Party days. But a lot has changed since those days, Dinesh, and we'll want to get your take just on you grading. You are an American man. I want you to grade President Trump on his job so far.
I would give him an A+ because I think that he has tackled the job with a speed and vigor and aggression that I did not, in fact, anticipate. Partly because it is a different Trump than we had even for the first term. I think that the lawfare, the attempts to put him in jail, all the stuff that he experienced in the interregnum between 2020 and 2024 transformed Trump. And I think the reason that men are responding in general in this way is that there appears to be a kind of psychological difference between the way that men and women have expectations of government. And certainly for men, I think they want the government to be more of a kind of umpire state, more of a cleanup operation, government to have a more limited role, giving people, individuals more scope in their private lives. And this might contrast with some women who prefer government to be more of a caretaker, government to be more of a provider, government to take a more active role solving your problems and my problems. And so I think that this helps to explain the so-called gender gap in poll numbers.
Dinesh, I agree with you in terms of Trump's transformation from his first presidency to this one. I'm curious to get your take as to what that looks like in real terms. Like when you say transformation, and it's all positive, transformation in a good way, not being duplicitous. He's actually improving on what he did in the first term. How so? How do you see it specifically?
In two ways. One is, you mentioned a moment ago that Trump is in a kind of continuous line with Reagan, but there is an important difference. I think Reagan's philosophy was that you cannot change the world in 40 ways. You can change the world in maybe 2 or 3 ways. And so Reagan would focus laser-like on the Soviet Empire, tax cuts, maybe Central America, and that was about it. A lot of other stuff was kind of put to the side, put on the shelf, perhaps even neglected by Reagan. With Trump, you see in the second term anyway, a kind of attempt to attack on all fronts. And it's so rapid, it's such a blitzkrieg that when the media gets on one issue, they're talking about, we're upset about Kilmar's Abrego Garcia, and boom, Reagan is now talking about the Panama Canal. They get onto that, and he's now talking about Greenland, and then he's on to something else. So he's showing a kind of nimbleness and speed that I think has taken the left completely by surprise. I think the other issue is that Trump has realized that we are dealing now, unlike in the Reagan days, not with democratic incompetence, but malevolence. There's no other explanation for the lawfare against Trump, the attempt to lock him up, the support on the left for censorship, the rise of approval of political violence on the left. So Trump realizes I'm dealing with a different kind of monster, and therefore a different response is appropriate.
Absolutely. And Dinesh, I like the way you described that, attacking on all fronts. It really feels like that's what he's doing, especially with trying to eliminate DEI, eliminating wokeness throughout every part of American society. We've been reporting on the FBI and how they're implementing changes to do that throughout the show. And before we let you go here, I want to get your take on this headline from Just the News. Declassified FBI memo sheds new light on Clinton's fingerprints and cache on Trump-Russia probe. The FBI determined that Fusion GPS, hired by Clinton's campaign, likely served as a coordinating hub for creating several bogus Trump-Russia dossiers, and noted an unusually cozy relationship between Fusion GPS and the Department of Justice. Only about a minute left with you here, Dinesh. Your take.
Well, it seems pretty obvious that this whole attempt to falsely portray Trump as a puppet of Putin, as a Russian agent, this was a propaganda smear that was developed inside of the Clinton campaign, almost certainly with Hillary Clinton's own architecture, if not approval. It was then kind of submitted to Obama because of that famous meeting in the White House with Obama, Hillary, a whole bunch of the top Obama officials, where they kind of sanctioned the operation operation to move ahead. So the most totemic figures in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, I think are the two heads of the snake of this operation. And yet somehow the operation, even though it's vindicated Trump, has not fully implicated them, or certainly hasn't imposed any kind of accountability on them. And that needs to happen.
Dinesh D'Souza, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
All right, you guys, meanwhile, head over to sacredhumanhealth.com and discover the incredible benefits of their grass-fed beef liver capsules. We're reading all about these benefits these days. Grass-fed beef liver, one of the greatest concentrations of nutrients you can add to your diet. It plays a vital role in supporting your heart, your brain, your immune system, while boosting energy and improving overall health. Sacred Humans beef liver capsules offer a natural alternative to synthetic multivitamins, providing nutrients in a form your body knows how to use efficiently. Many customers are thrilled with the noticeable boosts in energy and vitality they've already experienced. Visit sacredhumanhealth.com today. Use code SUNRISE for 10% off. Explore their range of all-natural supplements such as sleep, collagen, immunity, and magnesium with vitamin D, which are all designed to help you on your path to ultimate health. That's sacredhumanhealth.com, promo code SUNRISE for 10% off. All right, for more, let's bring in the CEO of that exact company, Sacred Human. The irony here, Trevor Comstock, good to have you. What was the inspiration behind starting this company? I want to note, before I forget, one of the things you all do that I think is really exceptional and different from any other company that I've noticed myself while looking over the website is that there are certain things that can't be absorbed without other elements, and you include those elements in the supplements that you provide, because a lot of times people would buy magnesium and not even realize you need something else in the magnesium, just as an example, to actually have the magnesium work and not deplete your bone calcium. But you guys don't miss a beat on this stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having us. I've been on a few times, but of course, for anyone that's a little bit unfamiliar with us, a little background, we got our motivation mainly through looking at the market and seeing what a lot of these larger companies were doing and what types of ingredients they were adding to their products. So in turn, we kind of went in the opposite direction to find a better way to make healthy supplements. And unfortunately, what we have seen throughout the industry is that many of these bigger corporations will advertise healthy products. But then if you go ahead and take a closer look, you'll find food dyes, preservatives, artificial additives, binders, and just a ton of ingredients in general that really don't do anything beneficial for your health. Now, of course, not all these larger companies are bad or making horrible products, but many, if not most, will add a lot of these ingredients that do things like cut costs and extend the shelf life. But again, they're not really good for you. So again, we just kind of went in the opposite direction, and we just make sure that we only use the raw natural ingredients and we never add anything artificial. And then on top of that, we always promise to make everything right here in the USA. And that goes for all of our products. Of course, our flagship product is our grass-fed beef liver, which I can't recommend enough. For anyone that's unfamiliar, it's kind of like a natural multivitamin, if you will, but it contains a ton of natural ingredients like iron, zinc, vitamin A, B12, CoQ10, folate. And then on top of that, it also contains many vitamins and minerals that most people are deficient in. So things like choline, K2, selenium, as well as copper. And then, of course, if you check out some of our reviews, oftentimes what people love about the beef liver is just the natural energy boost that it gives them. So that's always a plus there. So there's a ton of information on our website. We have a few other products like a collagen, which is great for skin, hair, and joint health, as well as gut function. Like you mentioned, the magnesium with vitamin D is always one of our best sellers. And then we have a natural sleep formula, as well as a natural immunity product. So again, if you click on each product, you can get a rundown of the different benefits and what's included in the products. Mm-hmm. And then if you want, you can, I think you mentioned it, but you can use code SUNRISE for 10% off any one-time purchase. If you do subscribe to any of our products, you're already locked into that 10% discount. So we got you covered there.
Oh, that's cool. So even in subscriptions, you count that Sunrise discount. Love it. So what do you say to people who say, look, I eat really healthy? I mean, for example, one of the things I order is grass-fed beef with liver and it's all chopped together and I eat hamburgers, and that's pretty much a sustainable thing for me. Do I still need the supplements, or can you get too much of it if you're eating really healthy and then you're adding these supplements? Advise people there.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first and foremost, you want to make sure that you're eating as best you can. I always, supplements are great. I always, even as CEO of a supplement company, I use them more as an add-on. So make sure that you're eating healthy, whether it's just like a paleo diet, like meat, fish, eggs, vegetables, and fruit. But many people don't always have access to the highest quality or organic type foods, or their diet may not be the best. So adding a supplement, if you're not eating as healthy as possible, is always a great way to just easily get those added nutrients. So, if you do want to add a beef liver or replace it with a synthetic multivitamin, my whole thing is with synthetic multivitamins and even greens powders, your body flushes out a lot of those nutrients. And what's great about the beef liver is that it's natural to the body and it's bioavailable. So your body can easily recognize and absorb the nutrients as opposed to just flushing them out. So you kind of get a better bang for your buck with the beef liver.
All right. Well, I'm sold. I'm going to order some today. Trevor Comstock, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. Don't forget your Sunrise as your keyword to get 10% off. A whistleblower makes a startling claim about Joe Biden getting lost in his own closet when he was in office. I hate when that happens. If that's true, though, it makes you wonder who was actually running the White House while old Joe lived and got lost there. Those details just ahead. Also, a heartfelt message from one American hero to another. What former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani had to say about the life and legacy of his former top cop, Bernie Kerik. They were friends for a lifetime. Later in the show, don't go anywhere.
Let's spill some tea.
All right, welcome back. I'm American Sunrise contributor Emily Finn. Let's spill some tea, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Make sure to go to artilleryteaco.com and use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off your first order. All right, time now to spill some tea. And in the cup today, Joe Biden and just how sick he was while serving as president. Missouri GOP Senator Josh Hawley says a Secret Service whistleblower told him old Joe experienced episodes of disorientation during his presidency, including instances where he reportedly became lost in his own closet at the White House. Listen to this.
Listen, I'll tell you something that I haven't said before because it came from a Secret Service whistleblower this past year. I talked to so many of them after the attempted assassinations of President Trump. But this Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The President of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous. We were lied to.
These allegations come amid ongoing investigations by the House Oversight Committee into Biden's mental fitness and the use of an auto pen for signing official documents. Let's bring in David and Gina to discuss. Gina, I had to laugh when you say, oh, you couldn't find his way out of his closet. I hate when that happens. I mean, but he should not be running be the president of the United States, running our country if these kinds of things are happening to them. It's just the examples are just ongoing. There's more and more examples of his mental decline.
Yeah, it's ironic because I'm not a White House expert by any means, but I happen to have seen the closets in the personal part of the White House, and they're not that big, Emily. It's not. I mean, I don't want people to be picturing like the island people that live over on Palm Beach Island in those closets that are like as big as my house. This is just a closet. It's not a tiny closet, but it's not a huge closet, and so it's not like rooms or something. There's no way to get lost in basically what is essentially a walk-in closet. So I'm actually shocked to hear it, although not shocked to hear it. We saw him barely able to, we saw the one day, remember, where he got lost just wandering around the White House when he was supposed to be going back inside, something he'd done for decades, even before he was vice president or resident of the White House. And so it's not that surprising to me. We all knew. So for those who act like, I heard Bill Clinton interviewed over the weekend saying, I had no idea. And baloney, he had no idea. We all knew, we were all talking about it. You had to be in a cave to not know, David.
Yeah, look, first of all, it was bad enough that he couldn't find his way out of the closet. That's bad enough. And now you're telling me it's a small closet, which makes it even worse.
I mean, not small,
like, that's really,
but not multiple rooms or anything. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's bad. At least he was only getting lost between 10 and 4. I mean, that's something to be said about Biden. So I'm happy about that. But really, the bigger story here is the auto pen, right? I mean, because, Gina, you keep talking about when our head's going to roll and what's going to happen, accountability and yada, yada, yada. I shouldn't call it yada, yada, yada because it's not yada, yada, yada. It's something, something. So I think that the auto pen is going to be the big story coming out of this, ultimately, in terms of, I don't know about charges, but I do know that this is probably going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court when someone somewhere files a lawsuit. It hasn't even happened yet. But I think that's where this is all going. We'll see. We'll see. In the meantime, I don't know what Biden's closet looks like in Delaware, but I don't really want to know.
Hopefully it's not as big as the White House closet. He'll get lost at home.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway was Gina's impression of Bill Clinton. That was spot on. That was perfect.
That was very good. That was really good.
Hilarious. All right. Still to come on American Sunrise, we honor and remember former New York City top cop, 9/11 hero, and patriot, Bernard Kerik. His life and legacy next as American Sunrise continues. Stay with us.
New York. Well, welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thanks so much for joining us today. This morning, we want to celebrate an American who made a big difference. Bernard Kerik was one of America's top cops and patriots, and he died last week. He was just 69 years old. He kept New York City in order after 9/11, and he stood by Trump's side through the president's various trials and tribulations. FBI Director Kash Patel announced his death on Thursday, saying that Kerik passed away after a private battle with illness. Patel went on to say, "Rest easy, Commissioner. Your watch has ended, but your impact will never fade." Kerik, an Army veteran, was appointed by former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani to serve as police commissioner back in the year 2000. Kerik was by the mayor's side after the 9/11 attacks as he oversaw the NYPD's response and the rescue and recovery efforts therein. Giuliani says about Kerik, "I was a better man for having known Bernie. I certainly was a braver and stronger man." During his 35-year career, Kerik received more than 100 awards, including one from President Ronald Reagan